I think a lot of us set our expectations low for this episode, and then we were blown away. Knock knock knocking on Hootie's door. A clear pun on the classic knock knock knocking on heaven's door. Is the 8th episode of Season 2 of The Owl House, in which Hootie tries to help the various other members of the Owl House, those being Ida, King, and Luce, and Hootie thinks he has failed, but in actuality he has succeeded. It's a very thoughtful, poignant episode in which the characters are really left to contemplate on what's actually bothering them and what they really want out of life. What will help them rise from their existential malaise. The King section was sweet and heartfelt, involving King dealing with the problems that come because he does not know his father, and as such he has no idea what he's supposed to be growing up into. He has no idea what the future holds for him, so he feels anxious and alone. The Luce and Amity section was very intimate and tender, but it also was a lot more contemplative and reflective than I anticipated. It involved Luce being so intent on conveying an image of coolness to Amity in order to try to impress Amity that Luce never stopped to consider that Amity liked her precisely because she wasn't cool. Because Luce just outright said what she thought and fought for what she believed in without always second-guessing herself and wondering if she's being too cheesy or corny. It's that corny cheesiness coming out of real earnestness on the part of Luce that Amity is really infatuated by. But by far the most striking section of the episode to me is the Ida section. Ida is trying desperately to stay awake. Hootie does not want her to stay awake because he's afraid of her confronting the owl beast. So he gives her cookies to make her fall asleep, but these cookies make her dreams more vivid, leading to these surreal, haunting, very philosophically compelling visions in which she must consider the damage the owl beast has wreaked on her life and especially her relationships with others, and in which she must accept the owl beast as a part of herself, something she is inextricably connected to, something she cannot rid herself of, no matter how hard she tries or no matter what intellectual solutions she tries to engineer. In other terms, she must confront her Jungian shadow in the form of the owl beast. In the presence of the owl beast, she experiences regret, guilt, fury, and ultimately feelings of reconciliation. She stops viewing the owl beast as an enemy. It has the surreal, nightmarish feeling of something like Evangelion or Twin Peaks, but it's not just weirdness, because it is so grounded in her own emotional struggles. It's so grounded in her own relationships and her own self-doubt and even self-loathing. Because of that, I think it is one of the highlights in the entire Owl House show, and it deserves a lot of respect. The peace of mind Ida reaches at the end of the episode is hard-won. Before we go too much further, however, I do think it is important for us to consider what the owl beast means to Ida personally. It's the result of her curse, of course, and it's a figure that she transforms into when she's stressed and anxious. But the transformation is not Something like Gregor Samsa waking up one morning to find himself inexplicably transformed into a giant insect. Well, on one level, the transformation is strange and kind of something that Ida doesn't necessarily know how to explain to anyone who doesn't see it firsthand. On another level, it is a transformation that is very related to Ida's own feelings and anxieties. Ida in her owl beast form does not look exactly like the owl beast. Rather, she appears to be a sort of combination between Ida as we know her and the owl beast. It's a synthesis of sorts, and Ida seeks to cut off the synthesis. She seeks to extricate herself entirely from the owl beast. But the episode insists that this is impossible. It's a fool's dream. She can control the owl beast with these elixirs and stop it from overwhelming her, but ultimately she must make peace with the owl beast and accept that it is part of her. It is not some outside force seeking to infiltrate her consciousness. It is a part of that consciousness. The connection between her and the owl beast, that synthesis of sorts, need not necessarily be negative, and this is demonstrated by Ida's new form at the end of her little segment of this episode. Like Ida's owl beast form, it is both Ida and the owl beast, but Ida is in control. She has harnessed the owl beast instead of viewing it as some antagonist, and because of this harnessing, Ida is able to unlock a different idea of herself, a different image of herself that she hadn't considered before. An image of herself that absolutely includes the owl beast, but is also something that she's not afraid to look at in the mirror, something that she does not view as a monstrous other, but rather as a component of herself that she does not feel the need to be ashamed of. The owl beast is not just a symbol of her resentment and anxiety and bitterness and sorrow, but it is that. It is the manifestation of a lot of the darker parts of herself. These parts of herself that can thwart her relationships with other people. These relationships are what ground this dream sequence. Without them, it would be poetic and visually striking, and it would give us a nice window into Ida's consciousness beyond the part she typically shows to us, but it would seem a little arcane. It's the relationships that make it feel so human, so grounded, so alive. And this starts with her relationship with her father, whom we see for the first time, and it's not a happy occasion. Ida transforms into the owl beast and severely injures her father. Gwendolyn and Lilith both look at Ida like she's a monster, and Lilith has to call the healing coven to help their father. Their father survives, but not without significant scars. Now, do I think Ida's father holds this against her necessarily? No. But it is the kind of thing that two people can't really forget. It's the kind of thing that can tear apart relationships, even if there is no outright animus. People just aren't as comfortable around each other as they were before, and that is the case with Ida and her father, at least that's what I think. Considering that we haven't seen her father besides this episode, I think it's a worthwhile assertion. Then we see Ida with Rain, and this is just heartbreaking. Ida is stricken with the impulse to transform into the owl beast, but she won't tell Rain. Ida will not let Rain into her life. I'm glad to get confirmation that I was indeed right about Ida and Rain. When we first saw Ida and Rain, I thought of them as old flames who could not make a relationship work for reasons other than that they didn't love each other. There was an outside factor. We see their relationship break apart in this episode, and we see that this outside factor was Ida's transforming into the owl beast, and as importantly, Ida's refusal to tell Rain anything about what Ida is going through. Now, from one perspective, someone could very easily blame Ida for not talking to Rain, even though Rain could possibly have helped Ida. One understands why Rain feels so isolated by Ida's behavior. Nonetheless, I would like to, if not defend Ida, then at least explain her mindset here. Ida is afraid of the owl beast because she's afraid of hurting those she cares about, including Rain. Now, the old, I'm cutting you out of my life in order to protect you idea can be cliche, but it's not here because it is very organic to what Ida has gone through. She was presumably close with her father, and yet she ended up injuring him badly because of her owl beast form. And she ended up tearing apart their family. Lilith carried a lot of resentment toward their mother because their mother always paid so much more attention to Ida. And Gwendolyn was just so monomaniacally focused on trying to heal Ida's curse, even though it had gotten to the point where Ida herself didn't even want Gwendolyn to do this. Considering the negative impact the curse has already had on her relationships with the people she was closest to, I don't think it's completely inexplicable that she does not really want Rain, this other person she really cares about, to have to deal with the curse. So it ends up destroying the relationship between Ida and Rain. The curse, Ida has learned, will always be there, but in this episode she finds a way to finally come to peace with it, to reconcile with the owl beast. Ida's segment here ends on a note of hope. Her curse, as terrible as it is, does not have to stop her from becoming close to those she loves and those she cares about. Now, again, this is in part because of the elixirs that she has. They allow her to not be overwhelmed by the beast. They allow her to meet it on even terms as an equal. Nonetheless, Ida, even with the elixir, still has to do a lot of work in this dream sequence to accept the owl beast as a part of her, as a presence in her life, as something to which she is always going to be connected. When I refer to the owl beast as her Jungian shadow, what I meant by that was that the owl beast is a summation of the parts of herself that she wants to reject, that she wants to keep concealed, that she does not want other people to know about. While I share Tolkien's disdain for simple allegories in the Animal Farm sense, and I would not say that the owl beast is nothing more than a manifestation of all Ida's own psychoses, a lot of the emotional impact of the owl beast and Ida's struggle with it does come from how the owl beast is aligned with the darker and more sordid parts of Ida, the parts that she would rather others not see. She rises above the influence that the owl beast has on her, and she does this not by fighting with it and conquering it, but rather by relinquishing those claims to domination and instead making peace with the owl beast. She doesn't view it as this vile, cruel monster anymore. Quite the opposite. She views it as this lonely, desperate creature who will always be bonded with her. As a result of this coming to peace, her new owl beast form is the furthest thing from monstrous. It's striking. It's mysterious. In an inviting way. Strangely lovely. In a Gothic sense. I think it's very important that Ida likes what she sees in the mirror. She likes the person that she has become. Not a person who has conquered the Jungian shadow, because it is something that can never be conquered. Despite how some people misinterpret Jung, but rather, the Owl Beast is, if not a friend, then a part of her. Just an aspect of herself that she is going to have to accept as a part of the whole, instead of trying to usher it into the shadows. She's able to reconcile with the creature and with that part of herself, and the results are very uplifting. So if you liked what you saw today, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Donate to my Patreon if you can, and you want to see more videos like this. Keep watching The Owl House. It's a brilliant show. And while it has some peaks and valleys, sections like this that drill so lucidly into a character's anxious psyche without giving any easy solutions make the show more than worth it. They're very satisfying episodes to see. You don't have to be a Jungian, but I do think that it is very true that trying to hide and smother all your darker parts of yourself, all these ideas and impulses that you think aren't appropriate, is not a path to a healthy mind. You have to accept and deal with these impulses. So anyway, tune in soon for my next analysis. It will be coming soon. Promise you that. Thank you all again. Adios, comrades.